the end of the year is always an interesting time because they're usually the two camps, those who are literally working until the very last day, because it is for many industries such a busy time. And then you've got the other camp who have at least mentally already checked out mid-November, because this is usually where all the festivities already kick off, from the Christmas parties and the functions. And what's the point of starting something new at that stage anyway, right? Now, it doesn't matter which category you are in, because this episode is for you. I'll share with you the behind the scenes, how I have mapped out my 2026, and I will also share with you a template that you can copy and paste and apply that for your own situation, because I truly believe 2026 is going to be a challenging, at the same time also a rewarding year. Now, I'm also going to run a live training and a live workshop in January if you want to work with me through this template, which I will also share with you, and a few other extra exercises. Hop over to impact with cc.com/planning and you will find all the details there. Anyway, let's get into it. You may or may not have noticed that I've been a little quiet lately, and there are actually a few reasons for it. The big reason is that I've tried to turn every single podcast also into a YouTube episode, and boy, let me tell you, completely different beast. You need the lighting, you need the script, you need the look and the outfit. And usually with the podcast, I recorded in my pajamas. So this is already a big change and shift and challenge for me. However, the other challenge that I've been facing is the messy middle myself. You know, what I've been talking about probably for nearly a year. I've been feeling that I've outgrown my own content, my own programs for quite some time. And one of the reasons why we moved to the Gold Coast exactly 1 year ago was exactly that, to step out of our comfort zone, because everything worked really well and really fine. And this is also what always worries me very much, when things are getting a little bit too comfortable. And I do not want to be comfortable in my life. Now, that sounds weird when I say that out loud, but I think you get the gist. I want to be challenged. I want to constantly push my own limits. When I put together my 2026, one of the things that I want more of, and this is one of the exercises which we're going through in a second, was that I want to be mentally challenged. Now, 2025, I did a lot of further education, from enrolling in a great diploma of education to completing an organizational psychology certificate, to joining a few masterminds, to joining industry associations, to running my own workshops with completely new content. So I was challenging myself in different ways. And to be honest, the only way how I was actually challenged, plus what I enjoyed, is when I developed new content and I also delivered it. With the especially traditional education, let's not go there too much, because it's not something that I extremely enjoy, simply because I find the delivery is outdated, the content is quite flat and boring, and it's not something that we can apply, especially moving, and we're already in the middle of that, into this fast-paced, very challenging and also a lot more demanding environment. So this is what one of my takeouts was for next year, which is also why I've now been playing around what is the next thing. Maybe you've been following me on LinkedIn for a little while or on Instagram. I actually started to write a second book, not once or twice, but 3 times. And I always stopped again, because I'm questioning my own direction way too much. From, do people even read books anymore, to what have I got to say about this particular topic? I don't have a PhD in it, to, you name it. So I questioned myself a lot about the direction. And then I have been considering to still put something together, even if no one buys it, but it's just for my own mental and intellectual challenge and stimulation, but also a bit of a guide. And I'm actually very curious to hear from you if that is something that you would be interested in. The idea is to, instead of having a traditional book, to turn it more into a workbook and have it like you can always use it kind of book. You don't necessarily read it from beginning to the end, but you go back there. You go back for frameworks, you go back for formulas, you go back for different ways how to approach certain things. For example, with communication, I teach my clients so many frameworks and approaches for different situations, simply because I'm not a strong communicator by nature. So I have, and still continue to learn, so many frameworks and approaches when I'm getting asked certain questions, because my fight, flight, freeze, or frown response is I freeze. When you ask me something that I'm not prepared for, or you give me a comment or a cheeky little statement, I have literally nothing to say. This is my natural response. So over the years, I've learned to be able to respond and not just freeze and look at people like a deer in the headlights, because I always hated it. And it's always been something that has held me back, especially in board meetings and so forth, where emotions are high and conversations are usually heated. And I'm just like, got nothing to say. Doesn't help with credibility. Let's just put it that way. But this is also something for you to consider. What is the big theme for next year? And I always start with reviewing what the year was. And for me, 2025 was a very interesting year for so many reasons. I moved to the Gold Coast at the end of last year, but we started properly the normal routines and finding new gyms and getting into the habit of going to the beach and so forth. January, February, and even now we still figure out what our perfect routine looks like, because obviously the different seasons require a slightly different routine and so forth. So for me, the theme of 2025 was to build/rebuild. It felt like we started from scratch, but at the same time, we've also had a good foundation already. So it was not a completely blank slate. There was something there already, but I was very selective with what I want to take with me, from people to tasks to clients to habits to beliefs. And then also, what do I not want to be associated with anymore? What doesn't work for me anymore? What has become a disadvantage? Even my routine, for example, I was such a strict routine person, but still am, because it gives me more stability and gives me also more freedom to think creatively and so forth. However, I was so strict to get up every day at 3 or 5, work for a couple of hours, go to the gym at 5 to 6, walk the dogs from 6 to 7, shower and work from 7:30, pretty much every day for years on end. And I thought, I'm not quite sure if this is still the right routine that I want to continue. So I've been playing around with different times that I'm going to the gym, with different ways I'm training. I started strong Pilates, which I really enjoy, especially the sweat sessions where you also have the cardio, hit intervals in between. And I absolutely love that, which I've never even considered last year. So I felt like, or I still feel like, I have grown a lot professionally and also personally this year. And I certainly want to continue that for next year. And one of the ways that I always teach how you can get different results is that you need to take different actions. But in order to take different actions, you need to believe different things about those actions. And beliefs come from the thoughts that are thought over and over again, which means that if I want to have a different result, I need to take different actions. But for that, I need to believe something different about me, about the environment, about what's required to get there. And that starts with thinking the right way. So one of the approaches that I've also changed is I do not want to work harder. And also reflecting on my childhood and growing up, one of the common themes was that nothing in my life was ever easy for me. Like, I was not a good student. I was overweight, so I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't naturally gifted in arts or in music. Yes, I learned a few music instruments just because it's part of basic education with my family, but I wouldn't say it was easy for me. I was always on struggle street. And then I got into university, and all of a sudden, simply because I was in charge of my own learning, my own curriculum, my own speed, I was just fast tracking the entire process and finished my master's degree way before others. And back in the day, where the system was slightly different, the average tenure to get the master's was 7.5 years, simply because it sometimes took so long to even just get registered for the exam. And because of such an influx of students when I started university, the waitlists were just so long. Sometimes you had to wait to take the exam another 6 months, 3 or 6 months. And if you didn't pass it the first time, you had to wait another 3 to 6 months. So this is why some of the 10 years back then were so long, but I wanted to finish as soon as I possibly can. I financed my own studies and I just wanted to earn money, which is why this was the first time when I actually flourished and stepped into my own way, because I was in control. And then I obviously got into corporate environments and worked in teams, and I never felt that I would actually fit in there. It wasn't until I stepped into running my own business that I felt this being in control feeling again, and I'm in charge in which direction we're going, how fast we're going, and it certainly is more my environment. But why I'm telling you this, and there's a point to it, it's for you to think what is my theme throughout not only 2025 or the year you want to review, but also in my life? What are the common themes and what are some of the beliefs that you may need to shed? So, for example, in my 2025, and I'm just looking over there because this is where my second screen is. In my 2025 vision board, one of the quotes that I put on there for the first time in history is, I choose it to be easy, because it's not something that I believe. I always subconsciously, I didn't necessarily articulate that, but subconsciously, I always felt I need to work really hard. And if I don't spend 15 hours on my work, I don't deserve any of the money. How stupid. But emotions are not logical. So you can say, this isn't right, this doesn't make sense, and I get it. And yet, my belief system still operates on that thought that has been pushed into my brain for so many years. So it does require a little bit of time to shift this belief system. And this is why this exercise to reflect and look back, not just on the year that was, but what was the lead up into that year? What was the theme of your life until now? What are some of the big milestones that have been ticked off on the way? One of the big milestones, for example, for us in 2023 was Dom had cancer again for the third time. And it made me rethink how I'm showing up and what does the business require me to do in order to be available for pickups to go to hospital or to drop him off or to simply be there when he is not doing well. And in my life, luckily, I've never experienced anything like that before. And sometimes when you get restrictions that you don't put on yourself, but somebody else or something else put on you, you have to think differently. And one of the books that I would highly recommend you to check out is called 10x is easier than 2x. I've read it so many times, and at the moment I'm actually reading it again. Is because you have to completely switch the way how you approach a certain goal. And one of the themes in the book is also that it's not about doing more of what you've done, it's about doing less but high quality. And this is something that I've been thinking about how I would apply it in my life. And even just from a more personal side, I used to do long distance triathlons for many, many years. And I thought, if I'm not exercising at least 4 hours a day, and this was a minimal, on the weekends it was longer because you had the 6 to 8 hour bike rides and so forth. If I don't train at least 4 hours, I won't have the body that I want. I won't have the fitness that I need to compete. I won't be able to actually run as fast as I want to and so forth. So I've always been my own biggest bottleneck from a belief system. So this was one of those beliefs that I did not want to hold on to anymore. And I thought, I'm now in my 40s, age aside or not, I do not want to carry this belief forward anymore. What does it look like? So this is a little bit of a backstory as to what I invite you to step into with me. How can we make 2026 the best year yet, knowing what the years prior brought to you and also what you may need to shed because it doesn't work for you anymore. Clearly, the world is changing, and I truly believe 2026 is going to be challenging, however, also rewarding for those who take bold action. In my next episode, I'll talk about how credibility has shifted and changed. And one of the experiments that I've also reflected on was this year, I committed to a 10 pull-ups in 12 months challenge. And maybe you've followed my journey on LinkedIn a little bit and on Instagram, but until 2024, literally the 18th of December 2024, I could not do a single pull-up. And then all of a sudden I could do one for whatever reason. I still don't know why. I just felt I could pull myself up there and then I could. Anyway, now nearly 12 months later, or it's literally December now, I am up to 9, and I posted my last update on the 30th of November on LinkedIn and on Instagram, showing that I'm now at 9. I still cannot believe it. And do not comment on the form. We don't want to hear that. It still looks a bit tragic, but it doesn't matter. I just want to get the reps in and then I can work on the quality. And this is also what I want to do with business, to be honest. I want to get as many reps in as possible to get more data, to then extract it. What does it mean? What does the market want? What does the market not want? And then how can I shift my offers and our services around that to cater for that? What I've also been doing this year, from a learning from 2024, is I've been sprinting, like not even running in Q4 in the last 3 months of the year. I've been literally running like a maniac because in 2024, which was the worst year in my business history so far, I put my foot off the gas too early and I didn't already make commitments for 2025. So my 2025 also had a slow start, which thankfully I made up in the last half of this year. So what I've learned is if you're not sprinting in the last quarter, you will have a super slow Q1. And especially in Australia, where it's summertime for us, people are out of office literally from the beginning of December until the end of January. So it's 2 months off until you can then log in some time. It's probably already mid to end of February until you can get the ball rolling with contracts, with actual work. It's March, but then there's already the Easter holidays. And then we've got May, and we've got so many public holidays in Australia at the start of the year. So as a small business, it's quite hard to get into a rhythm. So again, this is why I've been focusing in the last 3 months so much on what can I put in, what can I confirm now that I can hit the ground running already in January, so I don't have to experience this ghost town anymore. So what we come back to in this video, what I'm going to do with you, and hopefully the context gave you some food for thoughts already, what you want to review and reflect on your year. We are going through an executive planning intensive. Firstly, we want to decode the year that was, but then also extract the patterns and the insights, because this is the foundation to then review what is your brand now, where you want to take it, and also what's missing. Decide what you actually want and what comes with you into the new year. And finally, how can we build a tangible plan that you can implement straight away so you actually get the results that you want. So depending on your preference, you can either grab a notebook and just jot down what comes to mind, or you can also download this worksheet, which I will put the link in the comments. And yes, this is for free for you. Let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, what 2025 really revealed. Here's what I've noticed across the board, and I'm lucky enough to work across different industries, different sizes of business, different maturity of leadership teams, and those who are launching their own consultancy practice after having an executive career. It doesn't matter where people were at, but the sentiment was the same. 2025 felt noisy, distracted, and significantly harder to get the same traction. And that's the challenge, because people did work hard. They were delivering, they were showing up, and yet it took double the energy to get the same outcome. And the data backed it up. Business exits and insolvencies went up. Some of my favorite creative agencies who I've either worked with or have always been astonished by, they went under and had to shut down this year because of increased challenges in the market, increased pressure from competitors, because of a more competitive landscape, full stop. So the prices were under review and so forth. Also, micro businesses and early stage companies were flagged as high risk, and buyers became a lot more cautious. Sales cycles stretched. And as a small business, when you have to wait not only a month, 2 months, but 6, 12, 18 months for a decision, it is hard to stay in business. And let's not talk about skepticism, which is at an all-time high, and trust is at an all-time low. So no, if you have felt 25 was quite a weasel, you're not imagining it. It certainly wasn't the easiest year. However, what it also showed was that 25 didn't necessarily break businesses or careers. Yes, of course, in some instances it did. But what it more so showed was how fragile a lot of businesses and careers and roles are actually. Brands that looked polished and had it all together, but they were still sounding the same like everyone else. Messaging that sounded really smart, and there was actually nothing to fault, yet it didn't land. Systems that worked until it didn't. Offers were good, but not irresistible. And leaders who were running, but they're not really moving anything forward because of either pressure or because of focusing on the wrong things or because of additional challenges that they didn't see coming. 2025 certainly put a spotlight on the gaps between what we are building and what the market actually needed, especially with this changed landscape that we are operating in. So I'll recap what stood out for me in 2025 and also why it matters for how you plan 2026, because these are not random trends. They are patterns, and this pattern tells us exactly where your brand, career, and your business needs to evolve to for next year. So let's break it down. Now, the first shift I saw in 2025 is something I've been talking about for, hold on to your heads, 10 years on stages, in workshops with clients, and also in keynotes. I've done a keynote on portfolio work, portfolio careers, and the gig economy back in 2023 for the Career Thought Leaders Symposium in San Diego. And I was asked again to speak on this topic. However, back then, the trend and the theme and the numbers were a little bit more futuristic and nice to have. However, fast forwarding 2025, just a couple of years later, it stopped being a trend and it became normal because the reasons are simple. We are in a cost of living crisis globally. People aren't chasing a side hustle energy anymore. People are tired to start with, but they are trying to build stability in this very unstable environment. We have seen redundancies and layoffs happening again, which I obviously saw also in 2020, and then everyone hired and there was this massive shift in the market. And now we are back again, more so in the employers market rather than in the employee market. So employees or people in corporate environments, they are looking to create more stability. Now, when they can't get it with their permanent employment, of course, they're going to look for it in different ways. Now, here's what's fascinating. The shift isn't limited to early stage creators or freelancing. I'm seeing it literally across founders, executives, non-for-profit leaders, even senior corporate professionals asking now different questions from how can I become a fractional executive? By the way, I created a video on exactly that topic, so you definitely want to check it out. I put the link in the comments. But people are now questioning themselves. How can I use what I know, what I've learned, what I've experienced in a way that I can actually make money with? How can I diversify without burning out? Because there's only so many hours that I've got in my day, like everyone else. And this is also where, again, the 10x is easier than 2x principle comes in, because it's not necessarily doing more different things. It's about doing more with the same IP. Again, this is why I'm such a bully on building your own signature framework, because then you can diversify your income depending on how much time and energy you spend with a client or not. That the mindset certainly has shifted. It's not about squeezing in more hours. It's about removing the risk of relying on this single source income. And honestly, I've been doing that forever. I actually cannot tell you one single stage in my life where I haven't had at least 2 commitments. Even when I was still at school, I started working at my dad's company, not only in the summer holidays, but also on the weekends and in the afternoons when I was 12. That was just a non-negotiable. That was just a non-negotiable. And I'm grateful for that I've been exposed to real hard work very, very early. Now, from the age of 16, I also became a group fitness instructor and a personal trainer. Then when I was 18, I started university, but also became a personal assistant or a PA to a general manager at a mobile marketing company, whilst I was still teaching at gyms, being a group fitness instructor and personal trainer. So I only did about 20, 25 hours in the gym, and then another 20, 25 hours as a PA while studying full time. And then when I started working full time, I continued working at the gym at night and on weekends. And you can do the math. When you earn another 10 years than most others, and even though it was just a part-time income, it still allowed me to finance my studies. And because I studied economy and I was quite interested in the stock market, I invested quite smartly and watched the market. So I did a lot of day trading back then, and that's literally 20 years ago. But I made quite a bit of money, so I could afford my first apartment. So why I'm telling you this, it's because I'm not talking about portfolio careers from a theoretical aspect. It's because I've been living and breathing it for 25 plus years. And let's not date myself here, because I would have never thought I would ever say 25 plus years on anything. Anyway, moving on, fast forwarding to today, we live in an AI first world, and there is no way we are rewinding that. So the question is, how can we use it to our advantage? Yes, jobs and skills and tasks are going to be replaced by AI, and that's good because it allows / forces us to up level and focus on the more high value task and focus on creating more value with skills and personality traits that only we as human beings can bring to the table. However, what it also allows us is to do more with less technical expertise in that particular industry. So for example, when you only know the basics of copywriting and use the AIDA formula or the before, after, and bridge formula and whatever formulas there are, you can now instruct AI to use those formulas without you necessarily having to know exactly how to use it. So I honestly think AI gives us, all of us, such a leg up when we use it the right way. Don, my partner, he actually developed a custom GPT for his daughter to help her do her homework because she's on the spectrum of being autistic and she struggles sometimes to understand what the task actually requires from her. And now simply putting all of her medical records in the GPT, and it now takes that into consideration when it talks back as to what is actually required from this assessment. Honestly, how smart. So it's not about being afraid of AI. It's about embracing it to your advantage. And honestly, it is easier than ever before to do more things at the same time without necessarily burning out, because we can have a podcast, we can write a book, we can do further education, we can start a new hobby when we do it the right way. And this is what we need to consider when we talk about building a portfolio career, because I'm not saying be a systems engineer, but also walk dogs professionally, but also be a private chef and come to people's houses to cook. No, I'm not saying that. It's more about how can you create a consulting offer based on your expertise, built on your signature framework. How can you turn that into an advisory retainer? How can you license your IP? How can you get short-term projects to deliver a certain outcome and then get out again? How can you land board roles based on your expertise? So these are all fractional engagements rather than a full-time role. And so many board roles, for example, they only require you to attend a board meeting every 2 months for 2-3 hours. This is not a full-time job. And this is why I'm saying having multiple engagements on the go is honestly the easiest way for you to future-proof yourself, because you're not only building skills, but you're also building networks. And as we know, your network is your net worth, and your diverse network is your next career/business opportunity. So many amazing opportunities have literally just come from me knowing people, because in the end, as much technology as we have access to, people still like to do business with people they know, like, and of course, they trust. So portfolio careers are not the future, they are present reality already. And AI has made the transition a lot easier because we have lower costs to create. It takes us less time to create value. We can faster iterate, we can faster validate, we can faster distribute, and also increase the quality output with fewer resources. And this is the opportunity in 2026. It's not about necessarily working more. It's about diversifying smarter by building assets, IP, frameworks, small high trust revenue streams, and also credibility that unlocks even more opportunities. This is the new version of stability. It's the new form of career insurance. And for many of you listening, this is your invitation, because the goal isn't to start with 9 income streams that I've got at the moment. I've built up on that. I've always had at least 2, and then I got 4, and then I got 5, and so forth. So now I'm at the 9, adding a 10th next year, which I'm very excited about. But you don't want to start there. You want to have one foundation and then start with another little side project or a consulting offer or getting onto a board. However, that requires you to still be very active, put yourself out there, applying for opportunities, and take feedback if you are not getting chosen. Let's move on to trend and change number 2 that I've been seeing. And this is that everyone was running, but the ground kind of kept moving. Now, if I had to summarize 2025 in one sentence, it would be that you would finally get your head around the thing, and then something else would shift again. You would learn one tool, and then another one appears. You would align your priorities, and then the business would pivot. You would finally bond with your leader, and then bang, gets replaced. Surprise, there's a new leader. AI updated itself every 5 minutes. Expectations got higher, louder, and also faster. And none of the change was wrong per se. It was just constant. And people were not fatigued from change. They were fatigued from this constant change. Everyone was looking for, when does the world stabilize for a second that I can catch up? And it doesn't anymore. So we have to rethink how we approach change, because change is a new constant. And this is just a new reality that we are in. And the numbers on change and change fatigue are pretty wild. Most employees expect even more change next year. A big chunk are already stressed by the current pace. Most teams report moderate to high change fatigue, and a huge portion experience multiple major changes in just 6 months. So again, you're not crazy. We are not heading into a season of calm. We're heading into a season of more change, more structural change, behavioral change, digital change, economic change, and of course, generational change also. And even the workload might not get lighter, even though we've got so many tools available, but your approach absolutely can. And this is where my theme for 2026 comes in, and that is experiments. So instead of just pretending we can perfectly plan our way through change, we want to treat the year more like a series of experiments because it de-risks everything. It is time bound, it's specific, and it's also documented. So my commitment is simple. I want to have 12 big experiments in 12 months. Not being perfect, not expecting that everything works out. And this is the most important one, not being attached to any of the outcomes, because most of the experiments are designed to be a failure because this is how we learn the quickest. But if you put your self-worth towards the outcome of a certain experiment, then you doubt yourself. And this is where the spiral goes down very, very quickly. And I do not want that. So I want to divorce myself from the outcome. Whether it's good, it's bad. For me, it's just data. And I got the idea and the inspiration from listening to the Diary of a CEO, Steve Bartlett. And he said he has a head of failure. And I thought, how clever. However, as a small business, and most teams don't necessarily have the luxury of employing a dedicated resource to simply test, fail, experiment, iterate, and do it all over again. Our market is the head of failure. When we put things out there, we get feedback, the good, the bad, the ugly. And this is exactly what we want. And this is why I'm committed to working out loud, to learning out loud, to sharing what I've learned, because I truly believe that in a world that's constantly changing, the only way, or the fastest way, I should say, you can build credibility and also trust is by documenting what you've learned, what you're doing right now, not 6 years ago when everything has changed. This is also something that I'm going to discuss in the next episode. So make sure you subscribe because I will share with you an approach that I truly believe is game changing, no matter how senior, how mature, how far you are in the journey. It's certainly something that is completely underrated, yet will get you stellar results. And last but not least, let's talk about the big elephant in the room in terms of trends and shifts and changes, and that is content. Content isn't necessarily dead, but how we build trust has changed. There's been so much conversation and controversy around content. LinkedIn has changed. The algorithm doesn't show posts anymore. Is it even worth doing it? And the honest truth I saw in 25 is that people weren't necessarily tired of content, but they were tired of content that didn't feel real. Because now, thanks to AI, everyone looks and sounds polished and perfect and that they have got it all together. And we don't want it. We don't want all the same hooks, the same approaches, the same themes there. We want to see original and we want to see the story, which includes struggles, not just the here I am, perfect, successful, and everyone loves me. Boring. Nobody wants to see that. People want to see how you struggle through it and also what your learnings are, simply because they can relate to that a lot more. And this is also what makes you stand out when you document something that others haven't done, when you share the imperfect approach to whatever you want to achieve. In my case, for example, it was and still is the 10 pull-ups. However, for 2026, I've got multiple experiments from personal goals to professional goals. And I want to put it out there to get the buy-in, to get some feedback, but also to get some support in one or another way. So decision makers have not necessarily disengaged from content because I've seen people engaging in my pull-up challenge content that I have not heard from in plus years. But all of a sudden, they are back. And this is amazing because content is a conversation starter. And as we know, every conversion, whatever that looks like, from getting a job to landing a board role to being chosen for a corporate engagement, starts with a conversation. And when content leads to conversations, we are closer to the conversion, which we actually want. Speaking of what we want, we do want proximity. In-person events have certainly come back, but not in this massive approach. I started the executive table, which is a hand-picked gathering of 12 executive female leaders on the Gold Coast because I want to rebuild my own network. And 86% of my clients have been male for the last 10 years. And to be honest, I quite enjoyed it because I do have a lot of male energy and a lot of females don't resonate with me and vice versa. So it was always by design. However, I thought I'm getting older. You want to change your belief system, focus more on a female network. You would be surprised. And I am surprised because the females that I've attended so far have been outstanding, very driven, very committed, not a girly girl group. They're all female leaders who are doing amazing things, and it's very inspiring. So proximity, this is what people want, but in a smaller circle. So instead of going to an event with 600 other people want, especially executives, want to attend gatherings of 10, 20, maybe 30 people because you can have a proper conversation. People also want proof. We want to see how you think, not necessarily just what you know. We want to focus. We want to see the pattern. We want to recognize the pattern behind your behavior, meaning show how you've done it before, not just read about it. And most importantly, we want to see perspective in content. Show me your point of view that I cannot get anywhere else based on your unique experience. Because as I said before, I can talk about portfolio careers until the cows come home simply because I've never experienced anything else. And this is exactly my competitive advantage. Whereas others who can do the research, who can put together the best practice and the best case, how you actually build it, can also talk about it. But if there is a lack of personal experience, it makes it a lot less credible. Speaking of, one of my experiments and my goals for next year is to speak with 12 different industries, and I've locked in 5 already, which I'm very excited for and about. One of them is to talk about portfolio careers and how we can, as career professionals, help our clients to build that. I'm speaking about this topic at the Career Thought Leaders Symposium in San Diego in April. I will also put the link in the show notes because honestly, this is one of the events you do not want to miss. If you are in one shape or another involved in the careers industry, maybe as an executive coach, a communications coach, a career coach, you name it, you want to be there. And Marie Simenhoff is honestly one of the most incredible leaders and thought leaders in that space. And she always curates incredible speakers and topics. Honestly, you do not want to miss it. Now, this was part 1, a recap of 2025. And yes, I understand it was longer than expected, but I truly believe that understanding what we've just gone through, being able to spot the patterns and truly make sense out of what we are up against makes the next step, which is the planning for 2026, a lot easier and a lot more real. So with that, I am looking forward to being with you again in our next episode where we are getting practical. So make sure you are downloading the worksheet or get your notebook ready because we are working through a series of reflection questions, but also mapping out what a successful 2026 could look like for you. I'm looking forward to planning your 2026 together. I'll see you in the next episode.